Hey guys, we are the Average Gamer guys today. My name is Sloth. His name is Doc. Your name is Josh. We're bringing you a deck build for who today, Doc?
We are going to be talking Decimus today. This will actually cap us off for each of the leaders in the beta. Um, hopefully, hopefully they're not fooling us with the Sergeant Forge. So hopefully, when this game releases, we'll be able to talk him. But we're going to talk Decimus today. I think between the two of us, me and Sloth were talking before we recorded this, but I'm going to be honest, probably our least played leader for a few reasons. Now that we have the majority of the cards for the card library, I think he's actually gotten a lot better. We did an Isabel build, and obviously we've done all the others. They're linked in our playlist and down in the description. So if you're looking for somebody, you can head either of those two places to check them out. Um, but I think this was one of those things where you kind of had to build the cards up, get some more of those rare cards to kind of really fill this deck out. And I'm actually not disappointed with where we're at currently with it. We'll check deck stats just real quick. We have our standard 10 to 2 units to power ratio, which is really our prime spot of where we want to be. Decimus, and we'll show this kind of near the end when we talk about things you can kind of swap if you don't have something, or different kind of ways you could build this deck. Um, but he seems to be a little bit more power heavy than the rest of the leaders. I think that's just based on kind of the play style. I think they want players to be with this, and then just it just feels like he has less units to choose from and just more powers to choose from. To be honest, again, don't really worry too much about average level. Once the full game releases, that'll become a little bit more important. And you can see we've got a pretty standard unit counter, pretty good against infantry, pretty good against vehicles, little light on the air side, but that's really pretty general across the board. As far as energy costs, we got that nice kind of low to high end. We have a kind of a more top tier for the 12th card, but that's just because it happens to be the Warlord. And everything else is a pretty gradual step. So we get a nice energy basis for this deck. And then starting army, this is one thing we kind of went back and forth on. We typically run the vampire starting army, just because the maximum amount of units. You can see here we're running 4 Siphon Grunts plus the Terror Chopper, which has the shock ability. They actually pair up really nice together. So Siphon, if you guys aren't familiar, is going to help when those units attack. They're actually going to be gaining energy back based on the damage that they deal. And those large groups of units, while individually kind of weak, all together actually make for a pretty formidable force, to be honest. And then the shock, the Terror Chopper is actually really great. Again, being a fast unit on the battlefield, kind of similar to the UNSC Warthog, capable of going one, grabbing a point. So typically you'll see, a 2v2 match, everybody kind of gravitates towards two. You can kind of send that shock chopper over to that third point, get some, kind of cheeky points out of that. Or two, like we always talk about, grabbing energy right at the beginning. Shock chopper, honestly, a great option for that. So we prefer the vampire starting army. Sloth, I don't know if you have any comments on that.
Well, that's something that you're going to see that's going to be indicative of Decimus. He's going to be a vampire. He wants to steal energy from you and give it to himself. And the other thing is he's all about buffs and debuffs. So we kind of covered his propensity to have a ton of powers. It feels like at least he has more powers than anybody else, and they're mostly focused on buffing his army or debuffing yours. And you'll actually see that with the two of the units that we put in here. One being the Terror Chopper that you talked about, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But we'll talk about the Marauder Warchief too. Everything is about buffs or debuffs or stealing health. And I feel like that starting army kind of gets the ball rolling for you early game to do the exact same thing with the rest of the cards you're going to play.
Yeah, absolutely great points. Um, so jumping into the deck, you can see this is our basic 12 card build that we've got set up right now. And again, some decent success with that. We'll talk some card specifics. I'm going to kind of breeze over a few cards just because we've talked them in other videos. And if you've had a chance to play the game a little bit, you know that some of these stuff you need. So first card we got up here, we're showing, wrong button. We're showing the Hunters. You need these guys. Absolutely drop them in. Sadly, you don't get Ironclad for Decimus. So that is kind of a drawback a little bit when you're using him. But you need the hunters absolutely great against vehicles, and they can do a little bit of damage, but they are kind of squishy to infantry. We talk a lot about how important a support unit is, and honestly, my personal opinion, the engineer is better than the Nightingale. The overshield ability, don't forget about that. The capability, and I didn't really realize until I really started focusing on using that overshield ability, is how big of an area it actually covers. So while the Nightingale on
Yeah.
the UNSC side does a nice job of covering, a specific group of units that you have, Overshield, its range is a lot bigger. So you don't have to be too worried about, hey, well, where is my engineer placed? Is it placed directly above my group? Now, don't so much worry about that. Get that Overshield ability, either if you're defending a point or you're running into attack a point and you want some additional shield for your nearby units. Absolutely a great ability. The detect, I can't say it enough. You got to have detect units because there's going to be stuff in an opponent's deck that has that cloak. You want to be able to drop a good unit in to be able to see that. And this is honestly probably one of the best units you can do to do that, because this unit, again, flying above your army, you're going to be able to kind of move it around the battlefield just a little bit as you move your units around. So it's never going to be far from what you want to attack, specifically those cloaked enemies. Then obviously healing everything. The healing ability on this thing is great. So I absolutely recommend having that in there. Banshee, another good mid-tier unit, pretty generally good against everything, a little bit better against vehicles, decent amount of health, decent amount of damage dealing. Just a good card at 60 energy to throw in and really kind of balance, balance your team if you got a small team, amass at your base to push for a point, or just kind of bolster something that's on defense on one of the points as well. And we always talk about, it seems like generally for a lot of the decks, they have kind of a weakness to the ability to take down air. The Banshee and a few of the other cards actually in this deck seem a little bit more capable and a little bit more well-rounded to deal with that air threat. And the Banshee kind of helps you to form that piece. Obviously, we'll get to in a second, the Prowling Reaver being obviously your most proficient at taking those air units down. But I absolutely recommend having the Banshee in here for this one. Again, just for the low energy cost at 60, again, it really just kind of rounds your units out. As we hop over to the Bloodfuel Locust, we've talked in a few other videos. Sloth, I know, 100% agrees with me here. I think this thing's going to get nerfed. The amount of health it has, the fact it has a shield, the fact that it siphons and gains its health back, and the fact of how far this thing shoots is absolutely insane. So
The
pairing
bane
this,
of my existence.
right, pairing this up with a Blisterback, like if you space the Blisterback and this Locust out appropriately, you put the Locust kind of in the path of where the units, might come to attack to take out the Blisterback. Like the Blisterback's going to rain missiles down while the Bloodfuel Locust just sits there, continuously shoots a beam of energy at your units, stealing their health, while it just takes shots to the shield. And if they throw like an engineer above it, like you're having a bad day, which is a great strategy to use if you're the one doing it. But I think this is something we'll see probably take a little bit off its range or its health somewhere for when the full game releases. Um,
Really, really fits into this deck, even though it's not a specific Decimus unit. Really feel like the Bloodfuel Locust fits into this deck almost like it should be a Decimus only unit because of the siphon ability, the shield, and all the defensive reasons you talked about. But the buff, debuff, vampire kind of thing, this Locust fits into this deck like peanut butter and jelly.
yeah, absolutely, great points, great points. So talking about units that really fit, Terror Chopper. This is actually a really cool unit in my opinion. The fact that it has that shock and is specific to Decimus really, I think, hammers that point home that Sloss kind of talking about. Um, Terror Chopper, good unit overall, good amount of health. The fact that it has shock, again, you're looking at that debuff. So it's reducing enemy armor. You're driving this thing in as part of your little crew of units that you have, or dropping it on a point for defense. As soon as they start to bring that attack in, or you bring your attack to them, you're automatically almost getting an advantage. And at 60 energy, to be honest, there's really not going to be a whole lot of instances where you can't or don't have one of these. It's a fast unit, so great at, hey, I need to drop it in. I got 60 energy. I got to kind of cycle through some cards. I'm going to drop this in. I can use this to go grab energy in the meantime. And then, all right, cool. I'm going to go make kind of a swing for a point. Let's pull this thing in, put it as part of the group, and use it to go attack. Don't forget about the ram ability. Kind of like the Warthog, your choppers do take a little bit of damage themselves, but they obviously deal more damage than they do that they take. So again, just ability. Sloth said it in the Isabel build, and I'll echo it here. Great for kind of cleanup, to be honest with you. You're kind of getting near the end of the units. You got a few things left that maybe you got to target specifically. Hit them with that ram ability if you got one or two of these in there, and it's probably going to mop up what you got left. Jumping over to the
Good.
Prowling. Yeah, I was going to say, jumping over Prowling Reaver. Shield, Cloak, and Detect. You can't get any better of an anti-air unit than this. I know me and Sloth are huge fans of this. Predatory Leap is, I think, something a lot of people forget about, and to forget that it actually deals a little bit of damage, and makes this unit able to get in or out of battle. And the fact that this thing has the shield, the cloak, and the detect really makes this a really versatile unit, and also obviously kind of picks up a little bit of the slack for having a little bit of a kind of a weakness to the air like we usually talk about.
Usually the linchpin of a lot of our banished decks, just for that reason. The detect is nice, but the shield and the cloak and the ability to just rip apart air units makes this unit a must-have, even if you have to do a standard Reaver.
Yeah, absolutely. So something we'll jump over kind of more of the card specifics for Decimus himself to talk about. Vortex being the first power. At 100 energy, this power, what it does is it ends up in a small area, actually a pretty good AoE, pulls units in and kind of stuns them in a specific point. It doesn't last a whole long time. But honestly, if you're kind of on the winning side of a battle and they start to kind of flee their units, this is a great way for 100 energy to pull those units back in and finish them off. I've used it pretty successfully doing that. I'll talk when we get to the Warlord, kind of some other synergy that you can drop in for this and use this power specifically. But as a standalone, deals a little bit of damage, pulls in, stuns the units, and is honestly a pretty good power and pretty cheap at 100 energy.
Yeah, it's a great combination to do with a lot of other leader powers. I talked forever, what seems like in the Isabel video as a whole, but definitely about Ghost in the Machine. We've used it before. Pop a vortex down, um, suck a bunch of those wraiths and locusts and all manner of vehicles in one spot. They can't leave. My Ghost in the Machine is going to take them all. Because it doesn't last too terribly long. It doesn't really cut into my Ghost in the Machine time. But not just that, Mac Blast, close air support, Archer missiles. Vortex is great if you have the ability to communicate with a teammate and use that to really get the most out of your allied units' leader powers.
I'm going to be honest, this seems like the most team centric power just about out of anything else in the card library. And just as Law said, exactly for that reason. Um, and honestly, again, for you casting it for 100 energy, really isn't too bad. It's not going to affect too much of your ability to cast units. Um, the little bit of damage it does is nice, and and honestly, a pretty good power, to be honest, out of the selection that he has. So hopping over, we'll take a look at the Marauder Warchief. This is obviously another Decimus specific card at the rarity. And again, we keep harping on it, but the buff, debuff, kind of centric focus of this deck, and here's another great example with the rally ability. The increased damage, this is actually rally. I don't think very many units have this, and I wish a lot more of them did, because this is really good. So Marauder Warchief is 40 energy above a regular Marauder. Totally worth it here. This thing has a little bit extra health. deals a little bit of extra damage. Still good, really good against infantry. Definitely holds its own against vehicles and air units because it does have those missiles that it can shoot. I'm a big fan of the Marauders personally, just because they seem to have a better range than a lot of other units kind of in this class. So those missiles they
Yeah.
shoot are actually going to be able to kind of pop up onto the ledges like above A, or kind of a little bit in between your points, where some units would have to like walk all the way around, the land bridge between B and C. This unit, you could just kind of scoot them up towards the close edge side, and they're just going to be able to shoot missiles. They're just going to be able to shoot missiles. And again, I can't say enough about how actually really cool the rally ability is, how the increased damage really over time, and when you start to get into those really offensive or really defensive positions at those specific points, how much this is actually going to really help you.
Yeah, absolutely. It obviously fits in the deck for the reasons you talked about. The rally ability really helps a lot, and if you actually look in your card library, we don't have any Sergeant Forge cards being released yet. I'm hoping they're not trolling us with all that, but that's actually the ability that Sergeant Forge has. With Forge's Warthog, he has rally and then I think a shield. So if it's good enough for one of the 220 hero units, I think it's definitely good enough for a Marauder. It This is definitely a unit that you want to have in the back of your army. You want him popping rockets over the top and just buffing everybody else, which can kind of be hard because Marauders are fast. But pay close attention to where you're positioning your Marauder Warchief on the field, and you're going to be a lot happier because having him rally everybody else and stay alive is really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Great unit, and especially again, like we talked about, energy cost at 110 really feels like a good, valuable unit. So jumping over, I won't focus too much on the Wraith, just like the Scorpion. Uh, nice thing is about this unit that makes it a little bit different. It does have that shield, but it does have a smaller health bar, so they kind of even each other out. Just good all-around unit. Great to have in, kind of getting closer to your top end. Big damage dealing, and this is what's going to help you kind of make those pushes for those points. So absolutely always throw this in because it's just good overall around unit. And kind of the same thing with the Blisterback. Talked in a lot of other deck builds, and even our 2v2, 3v3, and 1v1 tips videos, which if you haven't checked them out, hop into the playlist and please do. Um, Got to have a siege unit. This thing is awesome. It also does count as one of your air units, so that's kind of the one main difference between the Kodiak. So this thing will actually fly up, and actually can kind of save itself from opponent hunters or Cyclops. So that's just kind of a consideration to make, which is why I think one, it costs a little bit more energy than your Kodiak, and two, I think it's honestly a better unit, and two, um, it does look way cooler. But the ability to drop this into siege mode above a point, use it to shoot, huge range, makes it like a no-brainer. If you really are kind of like unsure about a deck build or not sure kind of what to throw in there, we do have a general deck build tips up, and you'll hear me always talk about having a siege unit in there for defense, because they are really really awesome. So definitely throw the blister back in. I'm going to hand it over to Sloth to actually talk Boundless Fury here for us.
Yeah, Boundless Fury is one I've been using for a long time. For the life of us, we actually cannot remember if this is a card you start with or if this is a card you have to crack open out of the packs. But regardless, I really do like it. I did not read the description very well the first time playing Decimus, and I actually thought it was an AoE. But it actually says in range all friendly units, and it does. It buffs everybody on the field, which is cool, not just in that little small area. So really good bang for your buck. If I'm pushing C and I've got groups on B that are getting ready to get attacked, I'm gonna buff everybody at once, which is really great. The damage boost is really nice. The speed, eh. I mean, if I'm gonna spend 150 energy power card, I don't want to be spending time that I'm buffed running from A to B or back and forth. But that for me is kind of take it or leave it, but the damage is fantastic. It's really great to be able to buff everybody at once. 150 is a decent amount of energy to spend into it, but especially late game when you're accruing so quickly and you have two big armies clashing, or four or six. If you have all these armies clashing, having that extra boost can really change the tide of battle.
Yeah, absolutely. And the one thing I will give a plug for the speed is, again, you're probably using this a little bit more towards the mid to late game. And so if there is a kind of a worry point, or maybe the opponent's starting to really kind of rack up the points a little bit on you, that speed boost is just going to help you. So it's nice that they added that in, but this thing is purely really going to be beneficial for the damage, like Sloth said. And at 150, like he said too, pretty average, pretty even energy cost, and honestly not a bad buff since it hits everything. Um, the last card we'll hit over. Hopefully you guys have it unlocked. I was lucky enough to get all the banished leaders, but still don't have a Spartan. So hopefully, if you're out there, you feel a little bit bad for me. You probably don't at all. Sloth has all the Spartans, so I'm super salty at him about it. But the Warlord. So as far as the leaders go, he is the cheapest, second cheapest. Excuse me. The Elite Honor Guard is
Correct.
actually 10 energy cheaper. Um, but as far as the Warlord, I've actually had a lot of fun playing with this. The only one consideration, I'll give the drawback up front, is the fact that he can't attack air, which makes sense. He's carrying a huge axe around, and he kind of looks like a bigger guy, so he's probably not got a lot of hops. But the fact of he does do has a really nice shield, has that siphon ability. So out of the leaders, I would argue that's probably one of the best powers that they could give to this leader. So every swing of his hammer,
Yeah.
every little bit of damage that he does, he's actually getting his health back. And then he has that huge health bar, so he really does stay on the field for a good chunk. Um, I have actually been relatively impressed with the gravity shockwave. So stunning enemy units and structures within the blast area. The blast area for him is actually quite good. Um, this is kind of where we talk a little bit more of the synergy again. We talked about how the whole debuff, buff kind of aspect for this deck, as well as kind of the siphon ability being kind of one of the mainstays. So it's great that the leader has that siphon ability. But using the Warlord in conjunction with your Vortex, having him run into a group of units, a lot of times what they will do when they see a Warlord coming in, they're going to kind of freak a little bit and they're going to start to pull their units back because he does do a lot of damage. Best thing and the most fun I've ever had, honestly, playing this game is using that Vortex, grabbing those units back in, literally right on top of him, and then having him hit his gravity shockwave. And I mean, honestly, he's going to destroy just about everything in there. Because again, he's siphoning that health as he hits that gravity shockwave, so he stuns them again on top of whatever the Vortex does, plus whatever little bit of damage the Vortex power does itself. Then again, he has a ton of health, so he's probably going to end up staying alive. So overall, a very good leader. 200 energy, obviously the top of your energy cost. But a lot of times, these units, and I've seen with a lot of leaders, and I think Sloth will back me up here, especially even with the Spartans as well, and Atriox, like, you call those things in. If you manage that specific unit well, and you pair it with some good powers or a couple good units, like say you throw an engineer above this guy, and you got a vortex kind of in your back pocket, you start to move those units around, and kind of pester or attack points, destroy the enemy's units that they have, and then pull this guy back when he takes a little bit of damage. Like, you're probably going to win, to be really honest. Now, not to say that these things can't get easily destroyed. If you run up against an opponent that's got 6 Blisterbacks set up for you, and you start to run in, I mean, you're going to have a bad day. But if you really manage this unit well, get it back to base when it's a little bit hurt, and then throw supporting units with it, you're going to have a good time. And honestly, you're going to make this unit really worth the 200 energy. Opponents typically spend a lot more energy to get rid of this unit than you do to actually spend it. So uh, I really do like the Warlord. I was kind of a little skeptical at first. I was like, he doesn't hit air. I'm not really sure. But I've actually been quite impressed with this guy.
Yeah, and if you played Halo Wars 1, the way that siphon ability works and being a melee unit, the Warlord kind of reminds me almost of a really slow version of the Arbiter from Halo Wars 1. And you talked a lot about the Vortex and being able to pull people in. It's really cool. He actually is a lot more useful than I thought at the beginning too. That siphon ability and just be able to vampire off the damage because he does a lot of damage, and I know he has a lot of health and doing a lot of damage and having a lot of health and siphoning all that damage you're doing back to health. He has a lot of longevity if you use him correctly, like you were talking about. So uh, pair him up with those support units, like Doc said, and if you use him well, he can sustain for a really long time, much like the Arbiter did in Halo Wars 1. The Arbiter was so annoying. The more units you threw at him, the stronger he became, and the more he was able to survive. And I feel like the Warlord, if used correctly, can be like that.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Great unit. Again, hopefully you guys are lucky enough to open some packs, pull this guy out, and if you do, absolutely throw him in. The one last thing we want to do, just again, we've noticed kind of with the Isabel build, with this build specifically, right now we're looking at 5 rare cards and 1 legendary card. Again, I'm pretty sure you start with Boundless Energy. Let us know in the comments down below if you don't. I think we were talking, we're like, it's either Vortex or Boundless Fury. We couldn't really remember. Um, so we just want to jump into the edit deck real quick and just kind of talk through a few things that you could throw in if you by chance don't have some of this. Um, really kind of just moving over. If you don't have a Bloodfuel Locust, a standard Locust is actually going to do pretty much just about the same thing. It won't last as
Yeah.
long, mostly because it doesn't have that siphon ability. It's still going to give you great range, and at 40 energy, it is a pretty good unit, and it still has that shield. So I see a lot of people using these, honestly using 2 of them in conjunction, which is kind of a viable option too. Um, really, besides that, if you don't have a Prowling Reaver, feel free to throw the regular Reaver in. Shield and Detect. You do lose that cloak ability, but that's totally okay. You can kind of survive without. As far as the Terror Chopper goes, again, that being a rare unit, that is the preferable one to put in. Honestly, you could put in a regular chopper, but I think you might be a little disappointed with that. It is a great 20 energy unit card, but I don't think you're going to get the bang for your buck that you want. If you're purely got a energy focus on your mind, that's a great substitute. If it was me, I'm probably putting in a Marauder, to be honest, to fill that slot. And a Marauder being a common card, everybody has access to it. That only gets a little tough if you also don't have the Marauder Warchief, because obviously that's a kind of 1-for-1 easy swap. I am a big fan of the Marauders. I think they're a cool unit. So that's just kind of a consideration. And then,
Yeah, sorry, it sucks to swap out the Terror Chopper and the Marauder Warchief because they play into a lot of what we talking about with kind of passive buffs and debuffs, but it's still not a bad deck if you have to switch them out. I mean, it's definitely usable.
yeah, absolutely. And really from there, that's kind of where it gets a little bit tough. So hopefully you are a little bit lucky to pull some of those uncommon and some of those rare cards. Because besides that, say you're down the Terror Chopper, you're down the Marauder Warchief, and you're down the Prowling Reaver. Um, you're going to kind of be looking for some space to fill. And this is kind of what we talked about at the beginning with Decimus, and why I feel like you don't quite see as many of people playing him, minus just to get daily or weekly challenges, and that's because he is a little bit more power heavy. So Blast Hammer is one of those powers that you could throw in there. I think this is more. This is almost purely a defensive card, which is why I'm not as much of a fan of it. Does seem to do a decent amount of damage. I have used it before, and really can kind of like cap off holding a point for you. But the problem is a lot of times you want those units to stay close because you want to be able to destroy them, and this really isn't going to do that for you. And then additionally, I mean, he comes with the capability to get Siphon Field. I've play tested with this a little bit, and I think you have too, Sloth. Just not really worth the energy cost, in my opinion. Um, And the reason for that being, you don't. I never really felt like I saw a whole huge amount of damage coming off of enemies, and you have to be pretty kind of specific about where you place this. And then two, the healing ability, like a lot of the healing spell or powers in this game, um, doesn't seem to keep up with whatever damage those units are taking. So there's no like positive trade. Oh shoot, I'm about to lose some of my army. I'm going to drop Siphon Field and try to keep them alive. You may sustain for a few seconds additional, but I don't think it really ends up helping that much. Um, you can, if you are missing like a Warlord, Scarab Assault might actually not be a terrible thing to put in here. Um, but again, we've talked in other videos about the 300 energy cost. I kind of hope that's something that they kind of look at. The Scarab super unit is awesome. It does do a lot of damage, but it's probably helping you get 1 point at best and destroy some units. If you're smart about it and you're watching your units or the opponent's doing the same, a lot of times they're going to be able to pull the majority of those units out before this thing really gets the bang for its buck at 300 energy. So this is actually one area and one leader specific. If you have any better tips, other builds, um, or really anything else that you like to see in this deck that we haven't covered, please drop it down in the comments below. Like I said, we've done a lot of playtesting with all these different leaders. Really do enjoy this game, but I think Decimus is probably the one that we've put the least amount of time in until we were able to unlock some of these cards and see kind of the synergy of the deck come together.
Yeah, it's definitely a deck that I feel like to really get the most out of it, you have to work together with your teammates a lot. This is probably not going to be a deck that I would use for 1v1s, but definitely does not mean it's a bad deck. And it doesn't mean Decimus can't be built for a 1v1 kind of thing, but uh, to our opinion, this is probably the best deck that we could build at this current moment, and it just happens to support a little bit more team play, which is cool. But we're always open for some feedback. If you have some different builds, maybe some things that would work kind of a little bit more 1v1. Maybe a little input on the siphon field because we talked about it for the last couple of minutes, and then I don't know, man. It just to me it feels like them adding in harming the nearby enemies as well in the circle was kind of just like, well, it's the same thing as restoration drones for Anders. How do we change it? Oh, well,
Right.
he's siphon. Let's make it hurt bad guys too.
Right.
I'm probably not going to have bad guys in that field because I'm going to want to get as many friendly guys in that field as I can. So I don't know. It doesn't seem really worth it to me right now, but we've been wrong before once or twice. So we're definitely open to hearing what you guys kind of think about stuff like that. But I like Decimus a lot more now than I used to. He's definitely the leader on the banished side that I started out very meh, and he's kind of siphoned his way into my heart.
Nice, nice. So again, this is a quick snapshot of the deck. If you guys did enjoy this video, please hit that like button. Kind of lets us know as we kind of continue to get this channel up and running that the content that we're throwing out you guys enjoy. Again, down in the comments below, let us know, one, how we can make these videos better, two, what you guys think about the deck build and if it's working for you. This deck has been working for us, especially in those 2v2 and 3v3 games to actually pick up some wins. And obviously get those daily and those weekly challenges. So let us know down below if you got a completely different build. We're big on the community aspect of this game, kind of figuring out the best strategies or strategies for certain play styles. So do let us know down below, and then please subscribe. I ask that mostly just because we are going to be bringing a lot more Halo Wars 2 content as the beta runs through until the 30th, and then when the game actually releases in February. We're going to be all over it. Me and Sloth have early access, so we're going to be able to jump in and hopefully provide you guys some good content. That way, as soon as you get it, you can hit the ground running with us and with kind of what strategies we're checking out. So I've been Doc. That's been Sloth. We are Average Gamer guys, and we'll pick you guys next time. Thanks for watching.